Hello and welcome to Oracle Financials Cloud Advanced Tax Implementation course. This is the overview chapter where we're introducing the concepts and the topics we're going to cover in later chapters. So here, if you look at the course objectives of this Advanced Tax Implementation course, is we're going to identify the key features of Oracle tax setup, so configuring the core setup and then the advanced tax configuration options. To get everybody up to speed, if you've not used the cloud before, we've got a short chapter looking at navigation, security and the setup pages. In this class, we're going to emphasize the use of our functional setup pages rather than the older implementation projects. In terms of core of this activity is looking at the tax configuration then. And from previous releases, this engine, we've got a much streamlined UI. And we've got the foundation, often referred to as regime to rate. And on top of the regime to rate, we can then apply various, in terms of advanced rules if we need to. So we've got if you like, the chapter split into two, looking at defining the core basic setup of regime to rate. And then on top of that, building our advanced tax configuration options. And ultimately, we're going to have a central tax repository. And out of that, we need to make sure we've got accurate reports to do, say, the reconciliation from our tax repository to the GL tax accounts, our internal tax reports, and perhaps more importantly, the external tax reports to meet all the different fiscal requirements in all the different countries. And with our tax reporting, there's again a core configuration that everybody can use using the tax reporting ledger. And then there's more specialist reports with a different data model that will drive individual, if you like, localization tax reports. And they normally need some more configuration, such as a tax reporting type and tax reporting code to drive those very specific reports. So in this overview chapter, we've got two topics. One, to look at where you can get more help if you need to. And the second topic, just having a brief look at the Fusion tax engine. So the first task is, where do I go to get more information? Well, you've got the guide, so there's a PDF, or referred to as an e-kit, that you can download. And as well as the nice PowerPoint slides, make sure you make a note of reading some of the excellent text under those slides. There's a lot of good information in this implementation guide, but most of it's tucked away in the text. It's not always displayed in PowerPoint slides. Within the application itself, if you go to Application Help, you've got the embedded in terms of help, and if you switch on from the preferences, looking at help, you can get driven to the specific area when you're defining regimes, taxes, in terms of applicability, recovery rates, and you can take in specifically to the user guide that will tell you in terms of how to do those particular configuration tasks. Also, there's a number of videos that you can access through the online help, and you also have an option to put your user-defined content into that online help. So directly from the application, you can zoom into the help. More global and available to everybody, if you go to the Oracle Technical Network, abbreviated here to OTN, that's where you can download sample in terms of databases, middleware, apps, and you can do your own in terms of own testing in, if you like, a use of some demo technology products. My Support, MOS, is where you can go, and if you've got a support contract with Oracle, pull in some excellent white papers, and there's lots of excellent white papers in terms of, particularly for these localized tax reports, about how to configure them. A worldwide community is you've got the Oracle Customer Connect, and to get to all of that is www.docs.oracle.com. So if we look, probably the starting point to get more help is to go to docs.oracle.com. Oracle strategy, you've got the complete choice from the hardware, the database, the middleware, driving all the applications, and then you've got the applications really split between on-premise and cloud applications. So here, in terms of the setup, really could be used either on a cloud, on a Fusion apps premise, or in terms of the cloud. So whatever setup we do would be applicable for both of those. If we pick on cloud, you'll see on the left hand side you've got the menu telling us in terms of the videos available, books, and there is a nice video in terms of how to load the core setup of regime to rate using one of these rapid spreadsheets. So the preferred route to do configuration these days is to use the rapid spreadsheets. The rapid spreadsheets consolidate a whole host of tasks into a spreadsheet input. You create a zip file, you load that zip file into the database, and that, if you like, is the quickest way to do your initial configuration. Also in that docs.oracle, you'll find you've got the free area and 4 if you include the REST services. So you've got your file-based data import. So if you want to bring in external data, in terms of normally there's an Excel spreadsheet, you would load that into a temporary universal content manager interface. From that interface, validate it and then import the data. In terms of the tax, you could bring in terms of external transactions, so from a legacy system, payables, receivables, and get the cloud tax engine to calculate taxes and return those tax statuses rates back to the call-in application. For the technical tip, well, most of this slide here is all technical. You've then got the tables and views. So a good starting point on the tables is anything starting with the ZX is where you'll find in terms of the tables, and you'll find again in Oracle support, you'll have a whole host of entity relationship diagrams, ERD diagrams, that will show you where the configuration of the tax regimes, rates, etc. are stored. To call the data in our cloud environment, you've got the SOAP or REST services, and there's a detailed, again in the guides, of how to get to all of those. When it comes to videos, as I say, there's extensive use of videos to do configuration. These are all common to the applications, just starting with the apps. In terms of setting up GL Accounting Hub, the one they probably should have included here is there is a video in terms of how to do a VAT regime to rate configuration using the rapid spreadsheet. So you download the tax configuration workbook, fill that in, create a zip file, and load that in directly into the database to very, very quickly do your foundation or initial tax configuration. And this final bit of the slide here just shows you, if I was going into application help, what the application help would look like. So let me move in terms of, we'll show you some of the points that I've mentioned in this where to get more help. So a good starting point, this is Oracle Connect. So I've just gone in here, Cloud Customer Connect. I've logged in as my own person. And if I look at the home page here, this is the online community. And in terms of, I could come down, obviously with a financial twist, it's going to be under ERP. And I've got all the ERP events, and there I can put alerts, I can put comments, and the whole Oracle community. So partners, customers could all comment. And my experience often in terms of if you're implementing or you've got a particular challenge, someone else has got the same challenge. So you widen your knowledge by putting out in terms of request or a comment, and that's then referenced by everybody in this particular community. I could also have a look, and here I've gone to docs.oracle.com, so our one-stop shop, docs.oracle.com. Click the cloud applications in this case, and you'll see all the choices I've got, and obviously where financials or tax configuration is part of the ERP planning. So I click the financials button, and I've got all the options here about using, getting started, particularly to keep current. You've got all the new features in terms of as we go through the various releases, and various videos. So if I click the videos first, and you'll see a lot of these are generic type videos, but if we scroll down, and I think it's tucked in the way other financial aspects, and this is the one right at the bottom, so let's scroll down a little bit further. This is the one that's obviously relevant to any tax configuration. Here you'll see it says create tax setup using the tax configuration workbook. So a good start to have a feel for the tax engine might be having a look at that video. If I then come to the books, again, complementary to this OU guide, you've got two in terms of manuals. So if I come down here, you've got using tax. So that's very much targeted as your tax accountant in terms of looking at the tax repository and perhaps in terms of doing your tax report. If we're talking about your role of the tax manager, so you're going to do common or majority of the configuration in the tax engine, then you're probably going to be looking at the implementation tax book. And there you'll find you can pull it down in HTML or PDF. And if we continue down, again, there's in the security reference, there's a whole manual showing you all the duties and privileges for the roles provided for tax. So we've got a tax manager, tax administrator, tax supervisor, etc. And each of those have a different selection of privileges in terms of what you can do on the system and against which data. And then we have more sort of the technical aspect where you can see we've got these file-based imports. And if I open this up, you'll see the one down the bottom. Click on here. I'm using the tax engine I've configured in the cloud to calculate tax from an external system. So there's a spreadsheet with all the data, and those for you technically, you might want to see, you see there all of the interface tables, pulling in ZX, and the data stored perhaps in transaction lines and transactions with a header, and transaction lines from those non, if you like, or third-party systems. Let me go back one more. If we come down, again, I could look at the REST APIs, and if I scroll down, you'll find, and I've got to go a little bit further on the scrolling because right at the bottom, you've got the tax aspect. So if I wanted to pull back a list of all the regimes set up using the web services, then there we've got in terms of the REST points. Similarly, I've got in terms of my SOAP web services. So if I click on there, again in lesson 7, expand all of that, you've got in terms of everything common across the financial setup. And here we've got this, in terms of if I expand that, we've got the, in terms of SOAP to do the tax calculation service. Let me just expand that and pull in the taxable transaction and just waiting a minute or two for the screen to load, but that will give you information on that web services of loading in terms of from an external tax source. So if I go back here and let's go to my home, the final thing I was going to show you is in terms of looking at the technical setup. So let's go back to the books. In terms of the menu, scroll down to the menu, and here if we look at the tables and views for financials, and again I'm going to scroll down on all of these. You have to be zoomed down to the bottom in terms of, because obviously with tax it's at the bottom of all the menus here. And if I just expand this, this will give us a listing of all the major tables in terms of in the tax engine. And majority of them in terms of our configuration will be starting with ZX. So if I scroll down or expand the tables here, you can see all ZX accounts to store our tax accounts. We've got lines and transactions from external, and the starting point of our simplified setup in terms of our regime to rate, then all of our regimes, so all the in terms of rules and regulations of a particular, in terms of tax driven by the tax authority rules, will be stored in this table ZX regimes base, and the tax and the rates for that regime are stored under those different tables. So ZX regimes base there. So an awful lot of information there. Majority of that you can, as long as you know oracle.com, or in this case docs.oracle.com, then you can get yourself in terms of to that particular point. So this concludes the first section where we've looked at where we can get more information on in terms of configuring in terms of the tax engine.